For 15 years, Kody Brown told us that his heart had room for everyone. That was the whole philosophy. That was the foundation the entire family was built on. Love isn't a pie, he used to say. Loving one person doesn't take away from loving another. And then, on a quiet January special in 2026, sitting across from a host who asked him a simple question, Kody said something that quietly demolished that entire 15-year sermon. He admitted that he loved Janelle, that he might still love her, and that he wants her approval. And in the same breath, he said that Janelle plays him because of it. So tonight, I want to take that confession apart piece by piece, because I think it's the most honest thing Kody Brown has ever said on camera, and I don't think he fully understood what he was admitting when he said it. Let me give you the words as plainly as I can, because the exact phrasing matters. When the host asked him about Janelle, Kody said that Janelle plays him all the time, because he loved her, and might still, and he wants her approval. Read that again. This is a man who, for the entire run of the show, presented himself as the head of the family, the spiritual leader, the one everyone else orbited around. And here he is confessing that one of the wives who walked away from him still holds a piece of him, that he still wants her approval, that, in his own framing, she has a kind of power over him that he can't quite shake. That is not the language of a man at the center of his universe. That is the language of a man who just realized he's been orbiting someone else this whole time. Let's start with the phrase that's going to be on every thumbnail and in every comment section. I might still love her. Think about how loaded that word might be. He doesn't say, I loved her and that's over. He doesn't say, I have moved on. He says, might still, which is the language of a man who has not let go, who is maybe afraid to say it plainly, who is testing the words out loud to see how they feel. When someone says they might still love an ex, they are almost always telling you that they do, but they're not ready to fully own it. The hedge isn't honesty about uncertainty. The hedge is a man protecting himself from the weight of what he actually feels. Now layer on the second half, because this is the part that genuinely fascinates me. I want her approval. Stop and think about how extraordinary that is coming from Kody Brown specifically. This is the man who, for years, made the decisions, set the spiritual tone, decided which wife he'd spend his time with and how the family would run. The dynamic was supposed to flow one way. The wives seeking his attention, his favor, his approval. And now, after it's all fallen apart, he's telling us the truth was the opposite. At least with Janelle, he's the one who wants her approval. He's the one still reaching for something from her. The power he thought he had was never as solid as he believed, and somewhere deep down, he always knew that Janelle's respect was something he had to earn, not something he was simply owed. And then there's the third piece, the part that I think reveals the most about how Kody actually processes all of this. He said Janelle plays him. Now, I want to be careful and fair here, because there are two ways to read that. One reading is that Janelle is genuinely strategic, that she knows the effect she has on him and uses it. Maybe. But the other reading, the one I find far more convincing, is that this is a man reframing his own vulnerability as someone else's manipulation. Because think about it. If you love someone and you want their approval and they don't give it to you easily, the honest thing to say is, I have feelings I can't control. But that's hard to admit. It's much easier on the ego to say she plays me, because that turns your own longing into her scheme. It makes your weakness her fault. And that, right there, may be the most Kody thing about this entire confession. Because this is a pattern with him, isn't it? Throughout the show, when Kody felt something uncomfortable, he often found a way to locate the problem in someone else. When a marriage got difficult, the issue was the wife's attitude, or her lack of faith, or her unwillingness to embrace the family the way Robyn did. Rarely was the mirror turned on himself. So when he says Janelle plays me because I want her approval, he's doing the same move one more time. He's confessing a real feeling of wanting, the love that might still be there, but he's wrapping it in an accusation so that he doesn't have to sit in the discomfort of simply being a man who still loves a woman who left him. Now, I promised you fairness, so let me give Kody his due, because there's a version of this that's actually growth. It's possible that this is Kody, later in life, with most of the family gone, finally being honest in a way he never could when he had an image to protect. Admitting you might still love an ex-wife, on camera, knowing your current wife will see it, knowing the whole world will see it, takes a certain raw vulnerability. Maybe this is a man who has lost enough to finally stop performing. And if that's what this is, then there's something almost sympathetic about it. A man surrounded by the wreckage of the life he built, quietly admitting that the one he may still love is the one who's no longer his. That's not a villain. That's a tragedy. And I think the truth is probably somewhere in between, part genuine honesty, part the same old deflection he's always leaned on. But here is the question that I cannot stop thinking about, and I suspect you can't either. What does this do to Robyn? Because remember, Robyn is the wife who stayed. Robyn is the only wife Kody is still legally married to. Robyn is the one who, by every outward measure, won. And now her husband has gone on a television special and told the entire world that he might still love a different wife. Not loved, past tense, safely buried. Might still, present tense, ongoing. Imagine being Robyn and hearing that. Imagine being the woman who outlasted everyone, who got the house, who got the marriage, only to hear your husband admit on camera that his heart may still be partly somewhere else. That is a brutal thing to sit with. And it reframes Robyn's so-called victory in a much sadder light. She may have won the marriage, but if Kody might still love Janelle, what exactly did she win? And let's talk about Janelle's side of this, because her likely reaction is its own story. Janelle has, by every indication, moved on. She has built her independence, she has her own life, she's spoken about the strange experience of being known by the public without really being known at all. So picture Kody on that couch, confessing that he might still love her and wants her approval, and then picture Janelle hearing about it. I don't think she swoons. I don't think she's moved. I think the most likely reaction is something closer to a tired, knowing exhale. Because for Janelle, this confession arrives years too late and means far too little. The time for Kody to fully value Janelle was when he had her, not after she'd already rebuilt her life without him. And that gap between when he should have said it and when he finally did is the whole tragedy in a single sentence. There's an old, painful truth buried in all of this, and it's one a lot of people watching will recognize from their own lives. We often don't fully recognize what someone meant to us until they're no longer ours to lose. While Janelle was his wife, while she was right there being practical and loyal and steady, it seems Kody took that for granted. He chased the newer dynamic. He leaned into the relationship that flattered him more, and the steady wife became background. It's only now, in his absence, with her clearly thriving without him, that he's circling back and admitting she mattered. Maybe still matters. That's not romantic. That's the oldest mistake in the book. You don't value the water until the well runs dry. I also think we have to ask the uncomfortable question about the cameras, because nothing on this show happens in a vacuum. Was this confession genuine, or was it, on some level, a performance? Kody is a veteran of reality television. He knows what makes a moment. He knows that "I might still love her" is a sentence that detonates across the internet and keeps people talking about him and the show. So, is it possible that part of him knew exactly what he was doing, that he understood the dramatic value of saying it out loud? Sure, it's possible. But here's what I'd push back with. Even if he knew it would make great television, that doesn't make it untrue. Sometimes the most strategic thing a person can say is also the most honest, because the honest thing is the thing that lands. I lean toward believing there's real feeling under it, precisely because the alternative that he'd fake longing for a woman who left him in front of the wife who stayed would be a strange and self-destructive thing to fabricate. Let me zoom out, because this confession isn't just gossip. It's a window into what plural marriage may have actually been underneath the theology. For years, we were told this was about faith, about a divinely ordered family, about love multiplied rather than divided. But listen to Kody now. He's not talking about faith. He's talking about wanting one specific woman's approval. He's talking about a love that might still burn for one wife in particular. That doesn't sound like a man who loved 4 women equally as a spiritual principle. That sounds like a man who had favorites, who had a heart that leaned in certain directions, who experienced love the same messy, unequal human way the rest of us do. And if that's true, then the whole equal love philosophy starts to look less like a sincere belief and more like a story that makes an unequal arrangement easier to live with. And the fans have absolutely run with this, because they've been saying versions of it for years. Go into any corner of the fan community and you'll find people who have long believed that Kody's feelings were never as evenly distributed as he claimed, that certain wives held more of his heart and certain wives held less. Now, I want to be clear that the specific reading of who he loved most has always been fan interpretation, not confirmed fact. But what's remarkable about this confession is that Kody himself has now handed the fans evidence for the thing they always suspected, that the love was uneven, that he had a wife who could still move him in a way the others maybe couldn't. When the subject of the theory confirms the theory with his own mouth, the conversation changes completely. So what do we actually do with all of this? I think we hold two things at once. On one hand, there's something human and even a little sad about a man, later in life, admitting he may still love someone he lost. We've all loved someone we couldn't keep. On the other hand, we can't ignore the way he framed it, turning his own longing into Janelle playing him, dodging the full weight of simply saying, "I made a mistake and I miss her." Both things are true. He's vulnerable, and he's deflecting. He's honest, and he's protecting himself. That contradiction is, honestly, the most realistic portrait of Kody Brown we've ever gotten. And maybe that's the real takeaway tonight. For 15 years, Kody sold us a clean, theological story about love being infinite and equal and divinely arranged. And in one unguarded sentence, he showed us the messy human truth underneath it. A man with favorites. A man who wants the approval of the wife who got away. A man who still might love her and can't quite say so without making it her fault. The philosophy was the performance. This confession was the person. And the person, it turns out, is a lot more ordinary and a lot more heartbroken than the leader he always claimed to be. I want to go even deeper on this idea of wanting Janelle's approval because I think it's the secret heart of the whole confession, and most people are going to skim right past it. Of all 4 wives, Janelle was the one whose respect couldn't be bought with charm. Mary, for years, gave Kody the benefit of the doubt. Robyn, by most accounts, adored him and rarely challenged him in the way the others did. But Janelle was the realist. Janelle was the one who would look at a bad decision and call it a bad decision. She wasn't dazzled by him, and that's exactly why her approval would mean the most. When someone who sees through you clearly still thinks well of you, that approval is worth 10 times the approval of someone who's easily impressed. So when Kody says he wants Janelle's approval, what he's really telling us is that he wants the one verdict that he knows is honest. He wants the woman who isn't fooled by him to decide that he's a good man anyway. And the fact that he can't be sure she will, that's what keeps him reaching. There's also a generational weight to this that we can't ignore, because Janelle isn't just an ex-wife to Kody. She's the mother of several of his children. Children with whom his relationships have, by his own family's account on the show, become complicated and in some cases distant. So when Kody talks about wanting Janelle's approval, it's tangled up with something even bigger than the marriage. Janelle's approval is, in a way, a proxy for the approval of that whole branch of the family, the kids who grew up in her household, who watched how their father treated their mother, who formed their own opinions of him based on what they saw. Winning back Janelle's good opinion might be the closest thing Kody has to a path back toward those kids. And if part of what's driving this confession is a father quietly grieving the distance between himself and his children, then it's even more poignant than it first appears, and even more clearly something that words alone can't fix. And that brings me to the hardest truth in all of this, the one I keep circling back to. Approval and love are not things you can demand or perform your way into. You earn them through how you treat people while you have them, not through a heartfelt confession after they're gone. Kody had years to show Janelle that he valued her, to choose her, to make her feel like more than the steady, practical wife who held things together while his attention drifted elsewhere. The time to want her approval was when wanting it might have changed how he behaved. Saying it now, when she's already built a life that doesn't include him, isn't a gesture of love so much as an admission of regret. And regret, however sincere, doesn't undo a single one of the choices that produced it. That's the quiet devastation underneath this whole thing. Kody isn't reaching for a future with Janelle, he's mourning a past he can't rewrite, and calling that mourning love because it's easier than calling it what it is. The bill, finally coming due, for years of taking a good woman for granted. And notice what Kody did not say, because the silences in a confession like this are as loud as the words. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't say he wished he'd done things differently. He didn't say he wanted to make it right. He said he loved her, might still, and wants her approval, all of which keep the focus on his feelings, on what he wants, on what he's owed. even in the rare moment of vulnerability, the gravity still pulls back toward him. A true apology would have centered Janelle. This confession centered Kody. And once you notice that, you can't notice it, because it's the same quiet self-orientation that, more than any single argument or storyline, may explain why 3 women eventually decided that loving this man cost more than it gave. So I'll put it to you now, because I really want to know where you land on this one. Do you think Kody was being genuinely honest, finally vulnerable, a man owning that he still loves Janelle? Or do you think this was classic Kody confessing a feeling, but spinning it as Janelle playing him, dodging responsibility one more time? And the question I most want answered in the comments: if you were Robyn and you heard your husband say he might still love another wife on national television, how would you feel watching that? Tell me, because the read on this is going to be all over the map and I want to hear every side of it. If you want me to break down Robyn's position next, what it's like to be the wife who won the marriage but maybe not the heart, let me know, and that's the very next video I'll make. And if this is the kind of deep dive you come here for, do me a favor and subscribe, because we are reading this family more honestly than they've ever read themselves, and there is so much more of this story still to tell.